Good news can often get overlooked or buried by the negative in our everyday lives. So let's change that. I'm Adrianna.
And I'm Wyatt.
We're just two ordinary people without any special qualifications or anything trying to navigate life. We invite you to join us as we share wholesome stories, news articles of hope, and ideas about how we can all make the world just a little bit brighter. We are uplifting positive stories. Welcome back to another episode of Uplifting Positive Stories. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
And here's hoping everybody's April is off to a good start.
Yeah.
And those who participate in April Fools did so responsibly.
Yes, because pranks are fun, but
They can be.
sometimes they can go a little bit too far.
Just remember, pranks are fun also for the person who gets pranked.
Yes.
Keep that in mind.
Did you ever do any fun April Fool's Day pranks that you can remember? Any?
As an adult, one of the more recent ones I can remember was the whole quarter, like when you have the pencil around the quarter and you get them to do it down their face.
So it leaves a line.
Yeah. Well, it was really easy with my roommate. It was actually surprisingly easy. I had like a pile of quarters there and I did it to all of them. And like as it came in, because we were roommates, I was trying to do it. Like, this is really hard. Like I can't quite do it. And then he like without hesitation, like, okay, picked up the quarter and just did it like right away.
Oh
like
my gosh.
It was not the most exciting prank, but it was like the most like
that it actually worked.
Hook, line, and sinker like fell for without any issue whatsoever.
That's
and
funny.
then like, he didn't go anywhere afterwards. It was like at night, and I told him about it almost right away. Like it was just like, haha.
That's funny. See, those pranks are fun. They're harmless, you know.
It's not like I pushed you down the stairs or something. Like, haha, isn't that funny?
No.
And then like, no.
One I can remember, I was like, it went kind of bad. It was funny. So somebody we knew was watching somebody else's dog, and we had this very convincing looking fake piece of poop, and we put it on the floor. And they legit thought it was real, and they were so upset. They were like, this dog isn't potty trained? What the heck? And they started losing it. And we were like, oh, no. It's not real. It's not. They were not listening to us. And they're like grabbing their paper towels. And they were just so upset. We were like, it's not real. Don't blame the dog. So sometimes it can get too far. So we're like, no, stop it there.
And when it does go too far,
we have to admit that you're wrong.
See, it all works together. Maybe the timing of this is perfect. Like maybe you had a prank that you thought was fun and then it wasn't, and you need to own up to it, okay?
Exactly.
Or you were the recipient of it and you're like, you should
I didn't appreciate
admit that
this.
you were wrong,
This was a step too far. Exactly. So yeah, today's episode is all about admitting when we're wrong. And so that can be when we make a mistake, admitting that we made the mistake, and swallowing that pride and being humble about it and apologizing. It can be if we respond poorly to situations, or we're having a bad day and we take it out on somebody unknowingly. There can be a lot of things that we need to be willing to swallow our pride about. And so that's what this episode's all about. So we're going to dive right in. We got some very interesting stories here. This first one comes from the Best of Redditor Updates subreddit, and it is titled TIFU. So basically, today I screwed up by calling a family's recently deceased son a freaking moron. Yeah. So it's a tough read for the initial thing, but it comes out being very positive at the end. And I think it's important to talk about these kind of things. So here we go.
That's like horrifying.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and assume they don't know that in the situation.
Correct.
That's why you got to be careful with the things you say sometimes, because sometimes you don't know that there's more going on.
Right. So this one says, I didn't realize how long this story was until I typed it out, so sorry for the long read. For context, I'm a mailman who works out of the Midwest. I don't have to tell my fellow carriers in this area that the past 3 months have been rough. Not only has my city had snow for 3 weeks straight now, but Christmas package volume hasn't gone down very much.
Is this in Duluth?
Yeah, right? It sounds like it.
Not this year or last year. Maybe 2 years ago.
This post was from January 28th of 2025. So
okay, definitely not Duluth. we didn't
actually get that much snow in
this is a
January.
pretty dry winter for snow.
Which is weird for us.
That's very strange.
All right, going back to the story. I've been working from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday for these 3 months, just trying to keep up with the volume. It's also been very cold, and all around I've been extremely stressed out and tired. Well, yesterday was no different, and as I was told first thing in the morning that I had 2 routes I had to get done on my own, plus any extra packages when I got back. Not only that, but my ProMaster, a bigger mail truck, had been taken on Sunday for maintenance, and I'd have to take a much smaller Metris car. This means I'll have much less space for all of the mail and packages, but mattresses cannot drive through any amount of snow. Not joking. A light dusting on the road will result in you getting stuck. So I was already tired and very frustrated. Fast forward to halfway through my day, and I'm delivering packages to a nicer neighborhood. I see the house that I'm dropping a package at doesn't have any open spots to park on the street except for in front of their neighbor's fairly long driveway. It's not uncommon for us carriers to block a driveway for a minute to just drop off a package, so I don't think anything of it. Well, I couldn't see the end of the driveway due to the other cars, and as I turned to park, I realized that at the end of their driveway is a pretty large pile of snow. I tried to brake and turn, but it was too late. I land right in the middle of this snow pile, completely stuck. I try in vain to get myself out, but for safety reasons, we aren't allowed to dig ourselves out. So I have to call the office to get a tow truck, which I'm told may take an hour to get there. This means I'll have to stay an extra hour to get the rest of the packages delivered. Pretty obviously, I'm absolutely livid at this point, cursing up a storm in my car. Well, down the driveway comes a man who doesn't look very happy. He throws up his arms in that "what the heck are you doing" pose, which just makes me even more mad. I get out and I snap at him, "Can I help you?" He snaps back at me with a "what are you doing blocking my driveway?" This is where I screwed up. I'm usually very calm and polite with customers, no matter how rude they are to me. But today, I just couldn't control myself. And I say, well, it looks like someone was too lazy to shovel the snow on their driveway into their yard and instead piled it into the street. The man gets red in the face and looks like he's going to scream at me, but takes a deep breath and says, "My son shoveled this for me." Without even thinking about it, I respond, "Well, your son is a freaking moron." I again expect him to yell at me, which in hindsight is exactly what I wanted him to do. Instead, he stumbles back like I struck him, and I see tears start to pour from his eyes. He immediately turns and half runs up the driveway, and I can see that he's sobbing. I instantly feel confused and extremely guilty because, mailman or not, there was no reason for me to speak to him that way. So pretty quickly, I follow him up the driveway where I see their cars are parked. On both of the back windshields is a sticker of a boy with text on top and bottom that says, using a fake name, "Rest in peace, Riley, we'll miss you, 2008 to 2025. I feel like I was slapped in the face. Their child had passed 2 weeks ago. I walk to their door in a daze and knock. Both parents answer, a mix of fury and anguish on their faces. That's when the stress and exhaustion from the past 3 months and the intense guilt I was feeling hit me like a brick wall. I dropped to my knees and began to cry, trying to tell them that I was sorry in between sobs. To my astonishment, both parents dropped next to me, wrapped me in a hug, and started to cry with me. We stayed like that for a few minutes until I got my crying under control, and I told them why I was so angry and how sorry I was. The dad put his hand on my shoulder and told me he forgave me, which brought on even more tears. We introduced ourselves and talked for a bit, but eventually I had to go wait for the tow truck in my car. But as I was waiting, they both came out with winter gear and snow shovels. They were offering to dig me out, which I vehemently refused. I told them that I didn't deserve their help, but the mother told me I cleaned up my son's messes for 16 years because I'm his mother. That doesn't stop just because he passed, which caused me to cry even more. They eventually got me out, and I exchanged phone numbers with them and told them I'd invite them over for dinner later that week. They accepted, and now my wife and I are going to cook them a veritable feast this coming Saturday. And there's more, there's an update, but yeah.
Okay, that's good to know going into it. So, point of clarification. So, the driveway was supposed to be cleared out by their son who passed 2 weeks ago? I'm a little confused by the dad's comment of that was cleaned. It was cleared out by my son.
So, I think he was saying that his son was the one who does that.
Okay, so kind of like
my guess.
The normal routine is that
Right.
the son would have done it,
Right.
and maybe this is the first snowfall without,
Right.
since their son had passed,
Right.
And so there's, I guess I don't know how long the routine was like,
right.
stooped
And
in
it could
stuff.
be, we don't know the exact situation. It could be that they were an older couple, and so maybe they weren't able to do the shoveling, and they were, it was too soon after the son passing to like think about what to do and like to deal with that in the next snowfall. We don't know the situation. I'm
guessing that it was like, I'm just thinking about why they would have said like, "Oh, my son does the shoveling."
Right.
Is more like an outward, like him realizing that moment that, "Oh, my son does the shoveling."
Right. It could be right. But
I was just thinking, like, why would you have said that if their son was not around anymore? But maybe that's why I was like more like, oh, he does it. Like the realization that,
like, oh, he would have taken care of that, but because he wasn't here, he didn't take care of
which maybe
that.
they didn't even think about, because like, is that really like the top of your priority list? Like when you lose a loved one, like, and you think about like, well, who's gonna shovel the driveway?
Exactly,
like,
especially 2 weeks ago. Like it's very, very soon after that kind of thing.
I understand now. I was a little confused at first, but that makes sense now that I've thought about it a little bit.
But yeah. And so this story just goes to show that, sometimes we don't respond to things well. When bad things happen, we sometimes blow up and we don't think about the consequences of blowing up. And so kudos to this mailman for recognizing that, oh man, I screwed up. I was in the wrong here for yelling. That person didn't deserve it, even though it was a crappy situation. And it did definitely impact my day in a negative way, because now he has to work an extra hour and he has to wait for a tow truck and like in the cold. It's just not a fun situation. No one ever likes getting stuck in the snow. Speaking as a Duluthian, it's not fun when your car gets stuck in the snow, that's for sure. No. And so being able to recognize that, yeah, I was upset at the situation, but that person didn't deserve that, and how I said that, especially calling him a freaking moron. Like, no one deserves to be called that. And so being willing to swallow his pride and go up there and apologize, because he could have just hid in his car and waited for the tow truck and been like, oh, that was embarrassing, ooh, and then just left. But instead he apologized and even went so far as to offer to cook them dinner, which is really, really kind, know. So yeah, I just think that was a good example of how to handle it when you've screwed up and stuff, because again, it's not easy to do.
Yeah, and I guess they're responding to grief and such, but the dad also could have, screamed back and continued this cycle of escalating anger, which benefits exactly nobody.
And it was nice that they were able to get him out too.
Yeah,
that they shoveled him out, so that's good. But yeah, so someone had commented, top comment, a mistake done when in a stress day pales in comparison to the immensity of your soul and being able to sympathize and share your heart with them. You are a good and kind person, OP. Not everyone would think about the dad who went back home crying. You done good in the end, and that is what matters. So yeah, well said.
And again, good to admit that you're wrong.
Yeah. Because again, he could have hidden his car and just been like, well, that was bad, whoops, and then left. But to think about that, they might have gone inside and cried and like, feeling that grief and stuff, and to be able to, share that your heart went out to them in that situation. So, All right. So on to the update, which was 5 days later. It says, so first things first, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who posted love and support on the original post. I apologize for not responding to any comments. I really thought I was going to get torn up in the comments, so I muted the post right after I posted it. I wasn't going to post the story in the first place, but a friend of mine told me about this sub and told me that people would love to hear the story. I'll be more active on this post. Now, as for an actual update, the parents did have dinner with my wife and I last night, and they are absolutely wonderful people. They, 40 and 42, are quite a bit older than my wife, 28, and I, 27, but that didn't matter in the slightest. We had my family's famous goulash with a very nice bottle of wine they brought with them, and talked almost the whole night. At one point, I did work up the courage to tell them about the post, and they were a bit apprehensive at first. But once I read them some of the wonderful comments you all had wrote, I did not read them the absolutely disgusting comments some people left.
Ooh.
Yeah. They felt absolutely blessed that so many were supportive of their family and our new friendship. The father did have something he wanted me to include in this update. Before he had his son, he was a lot like me. Very quick to anger, prone to flying off the handle if he was having a bad day. When he had his son, he got a bit better, but was still an angry person overall. When his son died, he had an absolute meltdown and said some very hurtful things to family members who were trying to be supportive. He's going to feel guilty about that forever and made a promise to both his wife and son that he would keep his anger under control. Well, then along comes me, his first real test of his new promise.
You have to say, like, let's put that to the test, right? Shall we, with this random stranger?
He told me he genuinely believes that his son sent me a real test to the promise he made him. He encourages everyone to do the same, to approach others with compassion and kindness before anger, as none of us truly know what battles everyone around us is fighting. TLDR, my previous outburst of anger has led to a lifelong friendship. Yeah.
What true lessons there?
Yeah, right? I think that's a really powerful story. And I'm glad they posted it because it's a good example of that. And I know for us, it's like relatable again because,
Mm-hmm.
the snowfall, when it gets really bad here, can really bring out the worst of people. That's for sure.
But it does, I will say in general, it does bring the community together
It
in
can
terms
bring
of
out the
usually
best people, too.
at least in our area, it seems like neighbors help dig each other out and
Yes.
stuff. Like people drive around with trucks with plows in the front and people snow blow each other's sections of the sidewalks and such. And so I will say that does kind of
brings
bring
out the best,
together
too.
to a certain extent, but also like, man, when it's like the really bad storms of 20 to 30 inches and you're having to do that multiple times, or it's the heavy wet stuff, or it's blowing around the wind, or ice shards in your face,
Your
it can
fuse
be
gets short.
really bad. Or your snowblower like dies or just doesn't work, your shovel breaks or you break.
You're stressed trying to get to work. Yeah, it can really bring out a lot of stress and frustration. And so, yeah, being able to take a pause and really kind of check in with yourself and feel like, okay, I'm not mad at the person, I'm mad at the situation, and like I shouldn't take this out on the person, even though I'm frustrated, And so taking that beat. So that was a good test for the dad in that moment about the whole, you're blocking my driveway. And then also of the aftermath. And it sometimes we do screw up and sometimes we do go too far and sometimes we do things we regret, but being humble enough to face that person and apologize and try to make it right. So
It's also a good reminder also to like, obviously the main message is like admit when you're wrong and own up to it. But also like if you're having a like anger reaction to something, like take a moment, assess the situation. Like even like, sure, ultimately the dad rose above the situation and didn't rise to it. But like even when he first showed up, he was like, why are you in my driveway?
Yeah, exactly.
You just take a minute and like assess the situation. You probably could see that, okay, they're stuck.
Oh, they got
because of
stuck in my
and
snow,
like,
yeah.
and my driveway's not shoveled and stuff. Like you just
Exactly.
take a moment and assess the situation.
Yeah.
Again, ultimately they still rose above the whole situation as it was and such.
Yeah, exactly. On to our next story here. This one comes from the subreddit Tales from the Front Desk, and it is titled, Is a Wholesome Front Desk Story Allowed? Not my story, but someone from my hotel brand shared this. So,
I don't know why it wouldn't be.
well, a lot of the stories of Tales from the Front Desk are usually like crazy customers, like funny stories of crazy customers.
Sure, but it's called Tales from the Front Desk, not
crazies
complaints
from the front
not
desk.
crazies at the front desk.
Exactly. But this one's a wholesome one. And there are actually a lot of wholesome ones that I've seen on this thread. So here we go. This one says, not my story, but from a lady who works at the same brand. This is a guest experience I will never forget. A guest by the name of Laura A. arrived at the hotel for the first time almost 2 years ago. I could tell by her facial expression she was not having such a great day. She walked up to the front desk, slammed her purse on the counter, and stated her name. She was reserved in a standard king room. She was unsatisfied with 3 of our rooms, so I decided at this point she could use a setting with fresh air. I upgraded her to one of our king rooms with a patio. She went inside, got situated, and returned to the front desk teary-eyed and apologized for being difficult and told me she was an emotional wreck due to her daughter being in the ICU 8 months pregnant in a diabetic coma, and at this point, the husband had to decide between the baby or his wife. Yikes.
Oh, no.
Miss Laura was devastated. We talked a tad bit more, and she departed the hotel and went to the hospital. After my shift, I went to the local Walmart and picked up a few baby balloons, a congratulations grandmother card, and made her a snack bag with goodies for her visit at the hospital. I returned to place in the room and she was actually back in her room and I was able to give her the gifts directly. We talked a tad bit and prayed together, and I remember telling her I believe her daughter and grandbaby would be fine and I was looking forward to meeting them both. Miss Laura has been a loyal guest with us since then and always reserves a king terrace room when she arrives into town to visit her daughter and grandbaby. Baby A and mom are doing great, and not only has our hotel gained a loyal guest, but I have gained a great friend.
Wow.
Yeah.
I gotta say, bold move to bring congratulations grandma stuff when you don't know what's gonna happen in that situation. Because it sounded like, at least by the initial description, that was like it's between the mom and the baby.
Right.
Which, glad to hear that wasn't in fact what ended up happening.
Yeah.
But man, what a horrifying situation.
That's so scary. But I'm so glad that they both ended up being okay. But again, another story where the person at the front desk didn't know that she was going through that, and she was like, why is she so rude? Goodness gracious. And for the woman to recognize that, yeah, that person at the front desk didn't deserve me to talk to them rudely and be so uppity and meh towards them, and to explain why, because that gives context. It's not just like, oh, I was just rude for the sake of being rude. It's like, no, I'm going through a lot and I took it out on you because I'm an emotional wreck right now. And being able to be humble enough to admit that and to apologize. And because of that, like, it ended up being, again, she's a loyal customer, so it ended up being a good relationship going forward between, you know, customer and person at the front desk and stuff. And yeah, and then they felt inclined to, you know, go out and buy them some snacks and stuff like that for the hospital and stuff. So it ended up being a positive interaction when it could have just been a terrible interaction, and she would have felt embarrassed to go back there probably at, like, in future visits. And the person at the front desk would have had this impression that, oh, she's just a mean lady, right? So like, again, it's okay when we screw up. Like, we screw up all the time. We all have moments. We all have our moments where we could handle things better, but being willing to admit when we're wrong and admit when we don't handle things correctly, and being okay with apologizing. So, and
also, I think like it's a good reminder in OP's case, you know, like, if someone's rude to you, just kill them with kindness,
right,
as the saying goes. So maybe there, even if there wasn't like this big revelation of like, oh, here's why I'm like going through a rough time, or if they never came back, I feel like that's the right way to respond in the situation, or at the very least, like, being not throwing it back at them,
right?
Like, I know that's like
it's
the catharsis,
hard,
like, response we want is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like get him back, or I'm gonna be no, like put kindness back, and maybe you won't get that. Like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, in fact, it's probably more than likely you won't get it back, because people are kind of prideful and have a hard time. It's hard. It's resistant, you know, and it would probably just kind of hide away, you know. It's hard for people to admit that they're wrong. But so you can't do that with the expectation that they're gonna. But I still think it's the right thing to do, so that maybe it will kind of make them think about it, and then maybe, you know, not act that way in the future, you know, because all they did was, if you're mean to somebody and all they were was nice to you back, that, you know, you'd hope that would make them reconsider in the future those kind of actions and such.
Exactly. 100%. That's a good way of looking at it.
Just be nice to people.
You never know what they're going through.
Even if they're mean to you.
It's hard to do, though, but it is important, I think. Yeah, to keep that in mind, that we don't know they're going through, and it could be a situation like that Laura was experiencing in this story. Like, you don't know, and maybe she wouldn't have told you that, and she was really going through that, and you just assumed she was just a mean lady, you know? Yeah. So, yeah, it's important to keep that in mind. Or like in the first story, if they hadn't seen the sticker with a rest in peace with their son, like, you don't know. And so just be careful. And then if you do screw up, be willing to apologize and humble yourself. So yeah, it's hard, but I think it's important for all of us to remember that. On to our next story. This one comes from Tales from Retail. So slightly different. That was Tales from the Front Desk. This is Tales from Retail. And this one is titled Good Old Fashioned Wholesomeness Number 2. Here we go. Number 2? It's funny because we read the first one in the last episode.
Oh, so this is a continuation of that?
It's not the same story. It's the same person that wrote these stories. Oh, okay. So they wrote 3 different good old-fashioned wholesomeness stories on this thread. Okay. And this is number 2. This one says, I wrote a post yesterday about a boy named Gabe. Check out our last episode if you want to hear that story. It's really cute. And for the rest of the day, I felt really happy. So to continue the feeling, here is another wholesome story. Disclaimer, all names have been changed for obvious reasons. TLDR, don't mess with old ladies. Sweet smile, spicy attitude. It's 9 a.m. I'm alone at the service desk. The store is very empty. One of my regular customers is at the far end of the counter filling out some paperwork for a wire transfer. Her name is Beth. She is 82 and sends money to her college-age grandson every week to help with his bills and such. I see she is just about finished, so I walk over to get the computer booted up. Just as I turn my back, another regular customer walks up to the desk. Larry. Some background on Larry. He's a jerk. He always takes at least 45 minutes of your time without fail.
We all know a Larry working in customer service.
A wire transaction takes 5 minutes tops, especially when it's a repeat transaction like Beth's. Larry. Give me 4 books of the $10 lotto scratch ticket, 7 of the $40, and I need cigs too. You know the ones. Me, sure thing, Larry. Just let me cash out Beth's order real quick and I'll be Larry. I got here first. That old hag can wait. Now get me my tickets, woman.
Okay, there's a lot of not okays in this sentence. Even if you're joking, that's like, bruh, no.
Yeah. Okay.
Even if he's joking, that's still like, dude,
That's crazy.
Come on.
Before I could respond, Beth reaches over the counter and gently pats my hand. She straightens up, grabs her pink cane, and shuffles over to Larry. Her smile is so sweet it could give a honeybee diabetes. Beth, young sir, Larry was it? I understand you are in a hurry, dear, but I am 82. My time is very limited. So if you could kindly take that bad attitude of yours and shove it where it hurts, it would be much appreciated. Larry, for the first time, has nothing to say. He opens and closes his mouth a few times, but nothing comes out. He storms out of the store in a huff, walking so stiff you'd think he'd actually taken her advice. Beth turns to me, not missing a beat. Don't be too mad at him, dear. He seems nice. I completed her transaction, and she handed me a handful of Hershey Kisses out of her purse. This was a tradition between me and her. I had mentioned once that they were my favorite, and now she brings me some every other day. A few hours later, Larry comes back for his tickets and cigs. And guys, I was shocked. He was calm, quiet, and polite. A completely different person. He freaking apologized. I had been waiting on this man for 5 years. He had never said a kind word to anyone. What? Completely floored by this, all I could manage to say was, "Oh, no worries, no harm done. We all have bad days." Larry, yeah, well, it ain't no excuse. That lady done scared me straight.
He was so close. He was so close.
He's trying, though.
Larry, what are you doing?
He's trying.
I know, but Larry, you're letting the inside thoughts come out.
Ain't no man ever called me out like that. Never thought it'd be an old granny that'd put me in my place. From that point on, we ended up being pretty good friends, but he stopped coming in on Fridays as to avoid Granny, as he so lovingly started calling her. Edit, I forgot to mention that Beth is British, so her accent just adds a whole new level of sweetness to the story. Thanks for reading. I also love reading other people's funny or wholesome stories, so feel free to share. Have a great day.
Well, now you have to read that line.
Sure, I'll
as
give
an old
British lady. I would do a bad job.
Can I try?
No.
Oh,
if you want to, you can.
Young Sir Larry, was it? I understand you're in a hurry.
You sound Scottish.
But I'm 82. My time is very limited. So if you could kindly take that bad attitude of yours and shove it where it hurts, it would be much appreciated.
Oh, God. People that actually have a real British accent are like, oh, boy. I'm sure.
Listen,
I wouldn't be able to do better.
It's bold to try to do both. The old lady and British. Can do one and not the other.
Anywho.
Larry.
Larry is learning. And so and the fact that he was bold enough to come back a few hours later and apologize and say that his behavior was poor. That's a huge step.
Oh, yeah.
That's a huge step. And a lot of people would not have the bravery to do that, to even say that. So kudos to Larry for growing in that way and being like, hey, I got called out on my behavior and she was right. You know, like
Nothing
that.
Like a grandma to set you straight.
True. But yeah, I think it's really hard to do. And so again, we got to commend people when they do that. And I think that OP responded really great with how he said that too. Like, if people are humbling themselves to apologize genuinely and making an effort, like, try to reward that behavior by being kind back, you know?
Yeah.
If you can.
Mm-hmm.
If it's if you think it's a heartfelt apology and like it's sincere, like, try to be kind back and stuff, you know? So.
And if they don't, still be kind to them.
As best you can. As best you can. Again, a lot easier said than done.
Within reason.
Yeah.
We understand.
For sure.
It's a struggle sometimes.
It is. On to our news article for today. So this story comes from today.com and it is titled, "A Pizza Driver Got a $2 Tip in a Snowstorm, so People Raised Thousands for Him." So the story is about, it's from a TikTok that happened. So a guy known as Officer Craig posted an interaction he had with a guy named Connor Stefanoff, who was a 20-year-old delivery driver for Rockstar Pizza in Indiana. And basically what happened, there was a major snowstorm. It was really bad, blizzard-like conditions, very hard to drive in. And this guy was walking up the hill a great distance from where he had to park his car to this really big house. And as he was walking, Craig was filming him and he was like, "Did you get a good tip?" And Connor responded, $2. And Craig responded, "Are you kidding me? Man, cold-blooded, $2? Look at this man. This man walked through hell and high water to deliver pizza." So
no, he frozen hell and frozen water.
Exactly. It was a $40 pizza order, and so he said he got $2.15 for a tip.
Ooh, that's kind of bad.
Yeah. Craig felt bad that this guy had gone all the way out there and had to walk that far from his car in the snow, and he was wearing like sneakers and pants, and so I'm sure it was probably getting all wet and stuff. He felt bad for him, so he handed him all the cash he had on him, which was $15. And then he this went on TikTok and stuff, this video, and Craig wanted to go a step further, so he actually started a GoFundMe for this guy called Support Rockstar Pizza Driver's Dedication, and hoping to raise a few $100s for the pizza driver. And then it went crazy and a ton of people started donating. He had a goal to raise $500, and instead that they started raising even more, and all of a sudden they'd raised $1,500. And now 3 weeks after he started the GoFundMe, it raised $41,000.
$41,000
from nearly 2,000 donations.
Huh?
Yeah, the guy who posted the video about this guy, about Connor, raised $41,000 for him.
41,000?
Yeah. So he's gifting it all to Connor. And Connor Stefanoff says he plans on buying a car with the money so he doesn't have to use his grandmother's anymore. And he hopes to help her with bills too. If I still got some left over, hopefully college, Stefanoff says, adding that he wants to major in either history or business.
I mean, I'm willing to make a bet that is possibly more than he makes an entire year as a delivery driver.
Maybe.
Probably.
Maybe.
Or close to. It's got to be comparable at minimum.
But.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, crazy. And so with this story, it wasn't so much, like that the person who did the tip, came out and apologized or anything, but the fact that Craig recognized that, hey, this guy went all out here in the middle of the blizzard and kind of, it's his, I think a lot of times it's their car, right, that they're using. I don't know.
It depends,
it
but
could be.
I think so. But
having to go brave that weather and stuff, and it's dangerous driving conditions and stuff, and then to only get like a $2.15 tip after all that, that's pretty rough. And so for Craig to recognize that and be like, hey, this kid deserves more for his dedication and stuff, and putting his all into being a good delivery driver and still doing that and stuff. So the fact that he tried to make it right by trying to raise some money for him, I thought that was really, really cool. I mean, he obviously super unexpected and nowhere was he expected to do anything like that, of course. But the fact that he went out of his way to do something like that and it ended up blowing up that much from strangers on the internet. Mm-hmm. $41,000. That's crazy. Insane. That's amazing and probably life-changing in a huge way for this guy.
That's gotta be up there for we've had lots of stories involving donations and stuff and raising money, and that's gotta be up there for all the most successful ones that we've listed. And dang, super, super cool. So yeah, I just thought it was a really neat story and a good way to end off our podcast for today. So yeah, with that, we'll end today's podcast episode. Thanks for joining us. If you have any positive stories that you'd like to share or any hopeful articles, news articles that you've seen that you think would be worth sharing to the masses, please send them to us at upliftingpositivestories@gmail.com, or you can post them on our subreddit, which is Uplift Positive Stories. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button and comment.
That'd be awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, and we hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
And stay positive.